The library books felt heavier with each step Danny took through the darkening woods. He had missed the last bus again, too absorbed in reading about ancient myths to notice the time. Now the October sun was disappearing behind the trees, and the familiar trail home seemed longer than usual. 14 years old, and he still got lost in stories like a little kid. His mom would probably ground him for a week. Something whimpered in the bushes to his left. Danny stopped walking. The sound came again, high and desperate, like a puppy caught in wire. He knew he should keep moving. His phone was dead. Darkness was coming fast, and strange animals lived in these woods, but the crying continued, and Danny found his feet, leaving the trail before his brain could argue. He pushed through the undergrowth, following the sound to a small clearing where a hunter's snare hung from a low branch. Tangled in the metal wire was something that made Danny forget how to breathe. The creature was the size of a big house cat, covered in scales that shifted from gray to deep blue as it struggled. Its wings, delicate as dragonfly membranes, were torn where the snare had cut through. Blood darker than human blood dripped onto the fallen leaves. 4 legs ended in small claws, and its long neck curved as it tried to bite through the wire, holding it prisoner. Golden eyes full of pain and intelligence locked onto Danny. A dragon, a real dragon. Danny had seen the documentaries everyone had ever since the Dratch made contact 50 years ago, but they were supposed to stay in their own territory in the scorched reaches halfway across the galaxy. They definitely were not supposed to be caught in snares in Pennsylvania woods. The hatchling cried again, and Danny stopped thinking. He dropped his backpack and pulled out his pocket knife. The dragon tried to snap at him, but it was too weak. Its scales were cold under his fingers, colder than any reptile should be. Easy, Danny whispered. I'm trying to help. Wire was thick, meant for deer or coyotes. It took Danny several minutes of careful sawing to cut through without hurting the dragon further. The creature watched him the whole time, its crying slowly fading to confused chirps. When the last strand parted, it collapsed into Danny and LT Unc and GTY's hands. He could feel something strange in his chest, like a drum beat that was not his heart. The feeling pulsed in rhythm with the dragon's ragged breathing. Danny shrugged off his jacket and wrapped the shivering creature inside, ignoring the small claws that scratched his arms. The dragon was far from home. Its scales had the pattern of desert dwellers, made for sand and heat, not cold forests. Someone had brought it here, trapped it here, left it to die here. Dai's house was only 20 minutes away. If he ran, his parents would be furious. They would call the authorities. There would be questions and problems, and probably a lot of trouble. But looking at the small dragon bundled in his jacket, feeling that strange pulse in his chest growing stronger, Danny knew he could not abandon it. He ran. The garage workshop was dark and cold when Danny slipped inside. Through the side door, he could hear his parents in the kitchen talking about dinner. His younger sister Lisa was probably upstairs doing homework. None of them knew he was home yet. Danny cleared space on his workbench and laid the dragon down gently. It watched him with those golden eyes, no longer trying to bite or scratch. He found the first aid kit his dad kept for workshop accidents and started cleaning the wing tears with antiseptic wipes. The dragon flinched but did not pull away. If Anything, it leaned into his touch, making soft sounds that might have been dragon purring. Its scales warmed slightly under his hands, shifting from pain gray to something closer to calm green. "You're going to be okay," Danny said, more to himself than the dragon. "I'll figure this out." He found an old heating pad and plugged it in, then raided the mini fridge for lunch leftovers. The dragon ate the ham sandwich with surprising delicacy, turning its nose up at the bread but devouring the meat and pickles. After eating, it curled up on the heating pad and closed its eyes. Danny sat on the floor beside his workbench, exhaustion hitting him all at once. His mind raced with questions. How did a dragon hatchling end up in Pennsylvania? Who set that snare? What would happen when people found out he was hiding it? The dragon opened one eye and chirped softly, then it did something impossible. It uncurled from the heating pad, climbed down from the workbench with awkward movements that favored its injured wing, and curled up against Danny and LT Unk and GTY's side. The strange pulse in his chest synced perfectly with the dragon's breathing. Danny and LT Unk and GTY's hand moved on its own, gently stroking the small head. The scales were warm now, shifting to colors he had never seen in any documentary, opal and pearl with hints of rose gold. "Guess we're in this together now," Danny whispered. He fell asleep with his back against the workbench and a dragon pressed against his ribs, their hearts beating in time. Above the atmosphere, satellites designed to detect alien signals began recording unusual transmissions. In the scorched reaches, a mother dragon lifted her head, sensing something impossible through the vast dark between stars. By morning, everything would change. Sunlight through the garage window woke Danny with a stiff neck and sore back. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he felt warmth against his side and turned his head to find golden eyes staring at him. The dragon was still there. It had not been a dream. She tilted her head, studying him with obvious intelligence. Danny noticed her scales had changed overnight now, showing bright copper tones mixed with the opal shimmer. She chirped once, a questioning sound, and Danny felt that strange pulse in his chest answer back. "Morning," he said quietly. "You hungry?" The dragon's response was immediate. She stood up on wobbly legs and looked toward the mini fridge expectantly. Danny could not help but smile. At least feeding her would be easy. He managed to sneak into the house and grab food without his parents noticing. They both left early for work on Saturdays, which gave Danny time to think. The dragon ate scrambled eggs, leftover chicken, and surprisingly some hot sauce packets he found in a drawer. She seemed to prefer spicy things, licking the empty packets with a forked tongue. While she ate, Danny opened his laptop and started searching. The internet had plenty about dragons, but most of it was restricted. Government databases, scientific studies, diplomatic protocols, all locked behind security he should not be able to bypass. Should not, but could. Danny had been teaching himself programming since he was 10. By 12 he could crack most standard encryptions. His computer teacher said he had a gift. His mom said he had too much time on his hands. Right now he was grateful for both. It took an hour, but Danny got into the xenobiology archives. What he found made his stomach turned cold. Dragons, properly called draken, were classified as apex sentients. They came from a planet system called the Scorched reaches where temperatures could melt lead. First contact had happened 50 years ago and had almost started a war. Humans had tried to capture dragon eggs for study. Dragons had responded by destroying an entire research station. Thousands died on both sides. The peace that followed was fragile. Humans and dragons stayed in their own territories. Contact was forbidden, except through official diplomatic channels. Anyone caught violating the agreement faced life imprisonment or worse, and Danny had a dragon hatchling in his garage. He kept reading. Dragons were egg layers. Hatchlings stayed with their mothers for at least 5 years. They grew fast, reaching human-sized within months, house-sized within years. They were incredibly intelligent, some estimates putting them smarter than humans, and they communicated through something the reports called resonance, a psychic link that scientists still did not fully understand. That pulse in Dai's chest, that had to be it. The dragon finished eating, hopped down from the workbench, and walked over to Danny. She butted her head against his leg like a cat wanting attention. When Danny reached down to pet her, she did something that made him freeze. Smoke curled from her nostrils, but instead of dissipating, it formed shapes, pictures. Danny watched as the smoke showed a nest high on red cliffs, other hatchlings playing, then darkness, a cage movement, cold, more darkness, pain, the snare. Then Danny and LT Unk and GTY's face, large and clear in the smoke images. You're showing me what happened, Danny breathed. You're telling me your story. The dragon chirped in agreement. The smoke shifted to show a massive dragon, easily the size of a house, with scales of deep crimson. The big dragon was searching, calling, angry and afraid. Then the smoke dissolved. Your mother is looking for you, Danny said. The dragon pressed closer to him, and he felt her fear through that chest pulse. Not fear of her mother, but fear of what might happen, fear that her mother thought humans had killed her. Danny and LT Unk and GTY's hands clenched into fists. Someone had stolen this dragon from her home. Someone had put her in a cage and brought her across the galaxy. Someone had left her to die in that snare, and if her mother thought humans were responsible, the fragile peace between their species would shatter. I need to get you home, Danny said, before anyone finds you here, before your mom does something that starts a war. The dragon made a distressed sound and grabbed his shirt with her small claws. The meaning was clear. She did not want to leave him. She did not want him to send her away. Not away, Danny said, understanding somehow. We'll go together. I'll take you back to your family and explain everything. His sister's voice came from the garage door. Danny, what are you doing out here? Danny spun around. Lisa stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, staring at the dragon with huge eyes. For a long moment nobody moved. Then Lisa stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Is that what I think it is? Lisa, you can't tell Mom and Dad. Please, I can explain. His sister walked closer, movement slow and careful. The dragon watched her but did not seem afraid. Lisa knelt down and offered her hand. The dragon sniffed it, then allowed Lisa to touch her scales. She's beautiful, Lisa whispered. Why is she here? Danny explained everything. The snare, the injuries, the research he had done. Lisa listened without interrupting, her hand still gently petting the dragon's head. When he finished, she stood up and looked him straight in the eye. You're going to need help, she said, and money and supplies. You're not going to try and stop me. Lisa shook her head. You saved her life. That means something, besides you're right if her family thinks we hurt her. People could die, lots of people. She pulled money from her pocket, bills she had been saving for a new tablet. Take it, I'll cover for you as long as I can. But Danny, be careful, you're talking about going against every law we have. Danny hugged his sister tight. Thank you. The dragon chirped and wound between their legs, scales shifting to warm gold. Outside, military vehicles were beginning to move through town. Clock was already ticking. Sunday breakfast felt like acting in a play where Danny had forgotten his lines. His parents talked about roadblocks going up around town. Military trucks had been spotted near the old quarry. Something about unidentified signals. Possible security threat. They seemed worried but not panicked the way adults got when they did not want to scare kids. Danny pushed eggs around his plate and tried to look normal. In the garage, the dragon was hidden under a tarp with a bowl of water and leftover bacon. She had promised through smoke images to stay quiet. Dragons apparently understood the need to hide. Lisa kicked him under the table when he started zoning out. Their father was asking if Danny had seen anything unusual in the woods lately. Just deer, Danny lied. Lots of deer. After breakfast, Danny escaped back to the garage. The dragon had grown, not much but enough to notice. She was now the size of a large dog, and her wings had healed almost completely when Danny touched the membrane that had been torn 2 days ago. He found only thin scars. You heal fast, he said. The dragon rumbled, a sound like distant thunder. She pushed her head into his hands, and Danny felt that connection in his chest grow stronger. It was not just a pulse anymore. He could sense her emotions, her thoughts, not words exactly, but meaning. She was grateful. She was bonded to him. She would not leave without him no matter what. We're leaving tonight, Danny said. There's a fire tower on Cedar Mountain about 15 mi from here, high enough that your family can find you, remote enough that we might make it there before the military finds us. The dragon showed him smoke images of her mother again, crimson scales, ancient eyes, power that could crack mountains. Then she showed Danny something new. Other dragons, dozens of them flying in formation, battle ready, coming to Earth. They think you're dead, Danny realized, or they think humans took you. They're coming for war. The dragon confirmed it with a sad chirp. Her distress calls, the ones Danny had felt in his chest that first night, had traveled across space somehow. Her clan knew she was hurt. They knew she was on Earth. They assumed the worst because 50 years ago, humans had given them reason to. Danny looked at his phone. News alerts were piling up, unconfirmed reports of alien vessels near Jupiter, emergency broadcasts telling people to stay calm. His timeline was shorter than he thought. We leave it dark, he said. Pack light, move fast. The dragon nodded. She understood. She had understood all along. Danny spent the afternoon preparing. He filled his hiking pack with food, water, first aid supplies, his dad's emergency radio, and every map of Cedar Mountain he could find. Lisa brought him her portable battery packs and a waterproof jacket. She also brought news. They're going door to door, she said quietly. People in suits with weird equipment. They started at the edge of town and they're working their way here. How long do we have? Maybe 2 hours, maybe less, Danny felt Panic rise in his throat. 2 hours was not enough time. They needed darkness. Needed the cover of night to slip away. Unseen, but the dragon was looking at him with those golden eyes, trusting him completely, and Danny knew they were out of options. Change of plans, he said. We go now. Lisa grabbed his arm. Danny, it's broad daylight. Everyone will see you. Then I better move fast. He helped the dragon out of the garage through the back way that opened onto the woods behind their house. She moved with surprising grace, her larger size making her more coordinated instead of clumsy. Danny shouldered his pack and took one last look at his home. I'll tell them you went to Andrew's house. Lisa said that gives you maybe 4 hours before they figure out you're gone. What will you tell them after? The truth that my brother is trying to stop a war. Danny hugged her one more time, then turned to the dragon. Ready. The dragon's scales shifted to determined red. She was ready. They ran. The woods were thicker in daylight, easier to navigate but harder to hide in. Danny knew every trail from years of hiking with his dad, but he avoided the main paths. Instead, he led the dragon through creek beds and dense undergrowth where the military scanners might have trouble detecting them. The dragon followed his lead perfectly, somehow understanding that stealth mattered more than speed. When Danny needed to cross an open meadow, she used her smoke images to create a haze that confused the eye. When he stumbled over roots, she steadied him with her growing strength. They had been moving for 3 hours when Danny heard helicopters. The sound was distant but getting closer. He led the dragon into a small cave, barely more than an overhang of rock, and they pressed together in the shadows. Through their connection, Danny felt the dragon's fear, not for herself, but for him. She knew he was risking everything to help her. She knew humans might imprison him, or worse, for what he was doing. But Danny also felt her determination. She would protect him as fiercely as he was protecting her. The helicopters passed overhead without slowing. Danny waited 10 minutes after the sound faded before moving again. By late afternoon, they reached the base of Cedar Mountain. Danny and LT Unk and GT Y's legs ocked, and his water was running low, but the fire tower was only a few miles up the slope. They could make it before full dark. The dragon had grown again. She was now bigger than Danny, her scales gleaming with colors that seemed to hold light when she spread her wings to balance on a steep section of trail. They cast rainbow shadows across the trees. Almost there, Danny thought. The dragon rumbled agreement. Almost home. Above them, beyond the atmosphere where human eyes could not see, a massive ship broke through the space between stars. It was joined by others, a fleet of living metal and ancient fire. Earth's defense satellites began screaming warnings that nobody wanted to believe. Time had run out. The fire tower rose against the darkening sky like a skeletal finger pointing at the stars. Danny collapsed at its base, lungs burning, legs shaking. From the climb, the dragon settled beside him, her sides heaving but her attention fixed on the sky above. She knew her family was coming. She could feel them the same way Danny could feel her. Danny pulled out the emergency radio and extended the antenna with trembling hands. This was it, the moment that would either save both their species or doom them. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Danny said into the radio, his voice cracking, "My name is Danny. Right, I'm human. I'm 14 and I have the Dragon you're looking for, static. Answered him. Danny tried again. She's safe. I found her in a trap 2 days ago. I helped her. I'm not your enemy. Please, I just want to return her to her family before anyone else gets hurt. More static than a voice, human and tense. This is Lieutenant Barnes, U.S. Force. Identify your location. Immediately. I'm at the old Cedar Mountain Fire Tower, but I'm not talking to you. I need to talk to them, to the dragons. A different voice cut in deeper and crackling with interference. Young human, you have stolen what belongs to us. Danny and LT Unk and GT Y's heart hammered. That was not a human voice. That was translated dragon speech processed through technology he could not imagine. I didn't steal her, Danny said quickly. Someone else took her from you. Someone put her in a trap to die. I found her and saved her, and I've been protecting her. I just want to bring her home. Silent, the dragon pressed against Danny and LT Unk and GT Y's side, her warmth seeping through his jacket, through their bond. He felt her sending something, not words or images, but pure emotion, trust, love, safety. She was telling her family what Danny meant to her. We are coming. The dragon voice said finally, if you have harmed her, your world will burn. The radio went dead. Danny looked at the dragon, trying to smile, even though he was terrified. Your mom sounds intense. The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. Her scales rippled with nervous colors, shifting between warm gold and anxious blue. She knew what was about to happen. Her family would come in force, expecting a fight. The humans would respond with weapons, and Danny would be standing in the middle, hoping. His word meant something to creatures who had every reason to hate his species. Fighter jets streak overhead, their sonic booms rattling the old tower. The dragon tensed, small flames flickering between her teeth. Danny put a hand on her neck. Easy, he whispered. They're scared. Just like you were scared in that trap. Fear makes everyone dangerous. The dragon calmed at his touch. Danny wondered if that was part of their bond. Too, this ability to soothe each other. Everything he had read said dragon bonds were rare, sacred, chosen carefully over years, yet he and this dragon had bonded in days across species, despite every logical reason it should be impossible. The sky above Cedar Mountain split open with light. The ship that descended was massive, easily the size of a city block, but it was not the cold metal of human spacecraft. This ship seemed alive, its surface covered in scales that reflected fire and starlight. Other ships flanked it, smaller but no less terrifying. Dragons clung to their hulls, warriors in armor that gleamed like captured suns. Human jets circled, but kept their distance. Danny suspected someone high in command had given orders to hold fire. Starting a war required pulling a trigger, not pulling it required courage of a different kind. The lead ship settled into a hover above the clearing around the fire tower. Section of its underside opened, and a single dragon descended on wings that blocked out the moon. She was enormous. Crimson scales covered a body longer than a school bus. Her eyes burned like molten gold, ancient and furious, and filled with a pain that made Danny and LT Unk and GT Y's chest ache. This was a mother who thought her child was dead. This was a creature that had crossed the galaxy to find answers or vengeance, or both. The dragon landed with enough force to crack the stone beneath her claws. Danny stood on shaking legs. Small dragon pressed protectively in front of him even though she was a fraction of her mother's size. The massive dragon spoke, her voice reverberating through the air without need for translation. You are the human. Yes, Danny said. His voice sounded tiny. My name is Danny. You claim to have saved my daughter. I did save her. She was dying. I cut her free and I healed her wounds and I kept her safe even though I knew I'd get in trouble because it was the right thing to do. The mother dragon's eyes narrowed. Humans do not do right things. 50 years ago your kind tried to steal our children. You destroyed nests. You killed hatchlings in the name of science. That was wrong, Danny said. I know it was wrong, but that wasn't me. I wasn't even born yet. I'm just a kid who found someone who needed help. Pretty words from a creature who kidnaps. The small dragon moved, then, stepping out from behind Danny to face her mother. She made sounds Danny had never heard before. Complex vocalizations that needed no translation. She was speaking her native language, telling her story in full. Danny felt echoes of it through their bond. The trap, the pain, the fear. Then Danny and LT Lunkin GT, wise face. Danny and LT Lunkin GT, wise hands. Danny and LT Lunkin GT, wise kindness. The mother dragon listened. Her rage did not disappear, but something else entered her expression. Confusion, then recognition. You have bonded, the mother dragon said. And now her voice held wonder instead of anger. My daughter has taken you as hearthkeeper. I don't know what that means, Danny admitted. It means she has chosen you as family. It means she will protect you with her life, and you are sworn to protect hers. It is a sacred bond among our kind. We choose one hearth in our lifetime, one being we trust above all others. The mother dragon took a step closer. Danny held his ground even though every instinct screamed at him to run. I am Crimson Wing, the mother dragon said, and you, Danny Wright, have done what no human has done in 50 years. You have earned a dragon's trust. Helicopters circled the clearing like nervous birds. Human soldiers had surrounded the area but kept their weapons lowered, waiting for orders that nobody seemed brave enough to give. Danny stood between two species on the edge of war, a 14-year-old boy who suddenly felt very small. Crimson Wing studied him with eyes that had seen centuries pass. Tell me how you found her, Danny explained. Everything, the trap, the injuries, his decision to hide her despite knowing the consequences. He showed Crimson Wing the scratches on his arms from carrying the dragon home. He explained about the trafficking research he had found, how someone was stealing dragon eggs and selling them across the galaxy. The massive dragon's rage returned, but this time it was not directed at Danny. Traffickers we suspected but had no proof. My daughter's distress calls were strange, wrong, blocked somehow. We knew only that she had disappeared and that her signals came from Earth. We can help you find them, Danny said. The people who did this, I saved the data from the government archives. There are patterns, connections if we work together. Commander, we have incoming. A human voice shouted from one of the helicopters. Ground vehicles, multiple units moving fast. Military trucks roared up the mountain road, their headlights cutting through the darkness. They screeched to a stop at the clearing's edge, and soldiers poured out, weapons ready. An officer with graying hair and hard eyes stepped forward. I am General Park, she announced. and this situation ends now. Dragons, you are in violation of about 50 treaties. That boy is a missing minor. And possibly a criminal. Everyone stand down before this gets worse. Crimson Wing spread her wings, a gesture that made the soldiers stumble backward. Boy is under my protection. He is Heartkeeper to my daughter, by our law. He is clan. By our law he's a kid who kidnapped an endangered sentient being. General Park shot back. He's coming with us. The small dragon moved to stand beside Danny, her scales flashing warning red. Through their bond, Danny felt her absolute refusal to let anyone take him. She would fight, and her mother would fight beside her, and people would die. Wait, Danny said loudly. Everyone, just wait. He stepped forward, hands raised. General Park tensed. Crimson Wing growled, but Danny kept talking. You're both right, he said. I broke your laws, General Park. I knew I was breaking them, but I also saved a life that would have been lost. And Crimson Wing, I understand you want to protect me, but I'm also a human on a human world, and my people have a right to be concerned. What are you suggesting? General Park asked. Let me help, Danny said. I've already started tracking the trafficking network. The dragon, she's called Ruby. Now, by the way, Ruby has memories of where she was held, what ships were used, who was involved. With her help and your resources, we can find them. You want us to work with dragons? General Park looked incredulous. The treaty specifically forbids. The treaty is old, Danny interrupted. It was written by people who were afraid. And maybe they had good reasons to be afraid 50 years ago, but I'm not afraid. Ruby isn't afraid. We proved that different species can trust each other. Why can't everyone else? Crimson Wing made a considering sound. The young human speaks wisdom. My daughters' memories could lead us to these criminals, and their operation clearly spans both our territories. It would be a joint task force, General Park said slowly, working through the idea. Limited scope, specific mission. We could frame it as an exception to the treaty, not a violation. My warriors could assist, Crimson Wing offered. We have tracking abilities your technology lacks. Danny watched the two leaders size each other up. They were both powerful, both used to command, both protecting their people. But they were also both smart enough to see an opportunity. General Park turned to Danny. You'd be part of this task force, but you'd also face charges when it's over. What you did was still illegal. I know, Danny said, but if it means stopping the people who hurt Ruby, and who knows how many other creatures, I'll deal with the consequences. Ruby pressed against his side, purring. That rumble thunder sound through their bond. Danny felt her pride in him. He had saved her life, then protected her, and now he was building a bridge between their species. For a hatchling barely a week from her egg, she had chosen her hearth well. 3 days, General Park said. Finally, you have 3 days to help us locate these traffickers. After that, we discuss what happens to you. Agreed, Crimson Wing said, but understand this. General Danny Wright is Heartkeeper. He is under clan protection now and always. If your justice system proves unjust, we will have words. The threat hung in the air like smoke. General Park nodded. Slowly, duly noted. Within an hour, the clearing had transformed into an improvised command center. Human technicians set up equipment while dragon warriors perched on the surrounding trees watching everything with ancient eyes. Ruby sat beside Danny as he worked on a laptop, translating her memories into data the computers could process. "This is insane," one of the human texts muttered. "We're actually working with dragons." "Yeah," Danny said, not looking up from his screen. "Insane, but it's also right." Ruby rumbled agreement. Her scales had shifted to peaceful blue, the color of trust. Around them, humans and dragons worked side by side, awkward and uncertain but trying. It was not perfect, it was not easy, but it was a start, and sometimes Danny thought a start was all you needed. By dawn they had their first lead. The trafficking ring operated from a hidden station near Saturn's rings. They had been stealing endangered creatures from across the galaxy for years, selling them to collectors who paid fortunes for illegal exotic pets. Ruby had been meant for a private zoo on a colony world worth more than most humans would earn in a lifetime. "We raid at first light," General Park said. Crimson Wing nodded. "My ships will accompany yours." Danny looked at Ruby. "I guess this is where we say goodbye for now." The dragon shook her head firmly and showed him smoke images. Danny and Ruby together on the raid, fighting side by side. "Absolutely not," General Park said. "You're a child, I'm her hearthkeeper." Danny said. "Where she goes, I go." The raid happened 3 days later, faster than anyone expected. The trafficking station was a repurposed mining platform that hung in the shadow of Saturn's rings, invisible to most scanners and protected by mercenary ships. But it was not protected against a combined fleet of human warships and dragon battle carriers working together. For the first time in 50 years, Danny watched from Crimson Wing's flagship. Ruby pressed against his side. The dragon had grown again, now the size of a small horse, her scales brilliant with anticipation. Through their bond, Danny felt her eagerness to free the other captives, to make the traffickers pay for what they had done. The battle was brief and brutal. Human missiles disabled the station's shields while dragon fire tore through the mercenary ships. Within an hour, soldiers and dragon warriors were storming the facility together. Danny and Ruby stayed back as ordered, but their role proved crucial. Ruby's memories helped map the station's layout, showing the soldiers exactly where the captives were being held. What they found made Danny sick. Dozens of cages filled with creatures from across the galaxy, dragon eggs stacked like cargo, hatchlings kept in darkness, crying for mothers who would never come. Other species too, beings Danny had never seen before, all stolen from their homes and imprisoned for profit. The traffickers themselves were a mix of humans and aliens, all motivated by the same thing, money. They had taken sacred life and turned it into merchandise. When General Park read them their charges, her voice shook with disgust. The rescue operation took days. Each captive needed care, documentation, arrangements for return to their home worlds. Ruby helped calm the terrified dragon hatchlings, showing them through the psychic resonance that they were safe. Now Danny helped however he could, running supplies, translating between species, learning that compassion did not need a common language. By the end of the week, the last captive had been freed. The trafficking ring was destroyed, its leaders facing justice from multiple worlds, and Danny was a minor celebrity, his face broadcast across human space and dragon territories alike. He was also still a kid who had broken the law. The charges Stand, General Park said when they returned to Earth. You violated the treaty, you concealed a restricted sentient being, you fled from authority. These are serious crimes. Danny nodded. He had expected this. I understand. However, General Park continued, and her expression softened slightly. Context matters. The judge has agreed to community service instead of detention. 500 hours working with the new human Dragon Cultural Exchange Program. There's an exchange program now. There is as of yesterday, General Park said. Turns out when you prove two species can work together, a lot of people want to make it official. You're going to be teaching humans about dragon culture and helping young dragons learn about Earth. Congratulations, you're a diplomat now. Ruby rumbled with amusement. Danny just felt dizzy. I'm 14 and you prevented a war, General Park said. Age is just a number when you're making history. Lisa screamed when Danny got home, tackling him in a hug that nearly knocked him over. Their parents had questions, so many questions, but they were too relieved to be angry. Danny and LT Unc and GTY's father kept staring at Ruby, who had made herself comfortable in their living room, her tail wrapped carefully around the furniture. So we have a dragon living with us now, his father said faintly. She's technically living with Danny, his mother corrected. Apparently harder is a legally recognized bond now. We signed about 100 forms. Ruby purred and showed them smoke images of her gratitude. Danny translated, still getting used to his role as bridge between species. Over the following weeks, life found a new rhythm. Ruby continued growing, soon too large for the house. Crimson Wing arranged for construction of a proper dwelling, something that could accommodate both human and dragon. It became the first building of its kind on Earth, designed by architects from both species. Other young dragons began visiting. Curious about the human world, they found that many human children were just as curious about them. Bonds began forming, not Hearthkeeper bonds like Danny and Ruby shared, but friendships. Understanding, the kind of connections that would make future wars unthinkable, because too many beings would have friends on both sides. Danny returned to school, but now split his time between Earth classes and dragon culture lessons. He learned that dragons valued art, philosophy, and the careful tending of relationships above all else. They viewed humans with new interest, seeing in Danny and LT Unc and GTY's compassion, a trait they had not expected to find. Lisa, true to form, was the second human to bond with a dragon. Small blue hatchling chose her after watching how she cared for the younger children in the exchange program. Their parents accepted it with the weary resignation of people who realized their lives would never be normal again. 6 months after that night on Cedar Mountain, Danny stood with Ruby on a platform built between Earth and the scorched reaches, a neutral station where both species met as equals. He was giving a speech to a gathering of human and dragon leaders, talking about the importance of looking past fear to see the person or dragon who needed help. Ruby sat beside him, her scales now large enough to reflect his image like a mirror. She had grown beautiful, powerful, everything a dragon should be. But more than that, she had become his closest friend, his family, his proof that different worlds could come together. When Danny finished speaking, the applause came from both species. Humans clapped while dragons thrummed. Their approval, harmony of sound that would have been impossible a year ago. That night Danny and Ruby flew together over Earth, her wings strong enough now to carry them both high into the atmosphere where stars shone undimmed by city lights. Through their bond, Danny felt Ruby's joy, her love, her absolute certainty that she had chosen correctly that night. In the forest, "Thanks for saving me," Ruby's thoughts whispered in his mind. Her first clear words after months of images and feelings. "Thanks for trusting me," Danny thought. Back below them, Earth turned slowly. World now connected to the greater galaxy, not through technology or force, but through a simple act of kindness. One boy who had seen a creature in pain and decided to help. One dragon who had chosen to believe that not all humans were monsters. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest gestures. Sometimes preventing a war was as simple as cutting a snare and offering shelter to someone who needed it. And sometimes, Danny thought as Ruby dove through the clouds with pure joy, being a hero just meant being kind when it mattered most.